Hello, I'm Morgan. This is the follow-up post-mortem video for my honours project. The idea is I'm going to just show you the project and talk a little bit about it. So here we can see is inside like the first-person shooter implementation. The idea is I've got a weapon system with a variety of weapons implemented that has various parameters and a damage system set up. This is to apply context to the actual honours project, which is developing weapons using orthogonal unit differentiation as a balancing metric. You can see we've got a variety of guns, so you can swap between them. A variety of different archetypes, so you've got assault rifles, got some shotguns, got some submachine guns. So the weapon balancing system uses orthogonal unit differentiation as a tool for weapon balancing. So the easiest way to visually get this across to a designer or developer is using a radar graph. So we have various different radar graphs here set up using a graph system that I developed as a tool in Unity. And we've got a list of guns on the left here basically that are all they all exist in the project. They're all scriptable objects down here, so they're very easy to go through and change the parameters. Move that over here so you can see. So you can see you've got all of the various parameters for the weapons here. And obviously these can be adjusted to balance the weapons against each other. Now, where we have the weapons in this list, you can go through and you can add all archetypes, and then you can compare all of the archetypes. Or you can go through and compare certain guns against each other. So if we take these guns out of the list, we can compare the M16 with the MP5, which obviously is they're very different guns. One of them's an SMG and one of them's an assault rifle. But if you wanted to balance them against each other, you can. We have a simplified view and an advanced view. This is the simplified view where I have specific preset parameters to balance against. So we've got the damage analysis, which is this one, which shows the base damage, the multiplier, and then the range and effective range, as well as the fire rate. Ideally, it would be nice to further develop this to also show damage per second and some more advanced calculations based on the primitive metrics. We also have the ammo analysis, which is it takes the magazine size, the reload speed, and various other parameters. The recoil analysis at the moment is not quite the best metric to use, purely because more recoil would actually make the gun worse. So ideally what would be nice to do is in the future go back and adjust this so that it demonstrates and compares recoil more accurately. We've also got the advanced view here, which you can show any data you want basically out of the weapons parameters. So I can go through and add all of the different parameters available. I'm not adding the recoil, but because obviously you'll end up with far too much information on one graph. But if we add all of the assault rifles to this, you can see that none of the assault rifles themselves are particularly better than any other one, mainly because they're all better at something, which makes them orthogonally different. So, whereas if we take the LMGs, there's only two of the LMGs, so you can see it's a bit easier to visualize. You can see that the RPK is basically better at long range, does more damage, or you've got the SAW, which basically has more ammo, faster firing, higher fire rate, and you can aim down sights quicker. So depending on the situation the player was to find themselves in, they may choose one gun over the other, but no gun is better at all times. We can take an example of some guns that are not orthogonally different. So here you've got the Glock 17 is better, in this example, than the Colt and the Beretta. So the system feeds back warnings to the designer so they can go through and adjust the weapons balancing in the future. As you can see here, it's very simple to visualize that one of the guns is better than the other because the convex hull of the Glock encompasses that of every other pistol. So if I was to go into the scriptable objects now, go into pistols, and say we want to make the Glock weaker in one aspect so it's not better at everything. Obviously this is a fine balancing act to depending on the solution it's been implemented in. But if I was to go into the fire rate, for example, and just bring down the fire rate of the Glock, and then refresh the data, you can see that the Glock is now not better than the Colt. Obviously, it's very minimal, so it would be nice to go through and also add some more rules to the smart suggestions to be able to account for things where they're still very similar. In order to make it easy to add new weapons to the project, I developed a little wizard that means you can go through, you can press generate new weapon, and that gives you the ability to make a new weapon. We'll call it test, and we'll give it the description of assault rifle. We can go down to the bottom and we can press generate new weapon. What this does, this creates a new test weapon here. Now this new test weapon is a weapon object, a scriptable object that contains all of the data needed for the weapon, making it really easy to compare every weapon in a universal manner. If I head back over to the balancing dashboard and refresh the data, you can see we now have the test weapon in this solution. The test weapon is all set to 0, which means obviously it's going to be worse than every other gun. But it just shows you how easy it is to add a new gun. You simply, if we take a gun that already exists, for example, we'll take the AK, you go through and see how easy it is just to manipulate the parameters for it. Even adding just the audio used for shots, the flash effect, the impact shot effect, as well as the model that's used, and then all of the descriptors and thumbnails and anything that may show up in the UI. And it can all be manipulated and added here, rather than designers having to individually go into every single prefab and then manually adjust things. It reduces any margin for error and makes it really easy to then expand on the balancing system, and makes everything. As this is predominantly a tools design project, it was obvious that what would need to be done for this project is to compare data on various graphs, and the easiest way to do this is with radar graphs. There's no way really to, previously, to do this well in the Unity editor, so what ended up happening was I ended up having to develop my own solution, and this took the form of a plugin that I'm calling Graphs Plus. Basically what this is a system that can be used to easily add a graph to a GUI element for the Unity inspector, and all the graphs are responsive and can include infinite amount of data sets and an infinite amount of data points. So it makes them very good at comparing various different data sets, and very easy to add to a number of solutions. Here you can see this is just a sample window. You can see it's responsive, it resizes based on the window size. And here is the graph, obviously in a more advanced state. So the initial goal of the project was to design a system to balance weapons using orthogonal unit differentiation. By doing this, it's possible to test the use of orthogonal unit differentiation in a hybrid approach and how well it can be applied to weapon balancing. The project took place over 14 weeks, and for the most part it went to schedule, despite there being multiple distractions. Although it went mostly to plan, the scope was fairly limited, and with more time it could definitely be expanded to create a more well-rounded and commercially viable product. For the most part, the project went pretty well. A functional tool was developed that meets the project aims, and the ability to balance weapons effectively using a hybrid approach, I feel, has been achieved. If I was to take it further, the project currently is not commercially viable. It still needs a lot more polishing, and there's a lot of areas that could be improved to meet the demands of game designers and developers. For example, some data does not display correctly. So for example, the recoil analysis, as previously mentioned, more recoil on a weapon is worse. And currently the way it reads out on the graph, you would assume, and the way it works with the smart suggestions, you would assume that a gun with higher recoil is better, and this is obviously not the case. So that is definitely something that I would like to improve in the future. Yeah, so I feel like on the whole the project went pretty well. I feel like I've definitely developed my skills as a tools designer and a technical designer developing complex gameplay systems. If you'd like to read more about my project or possibly test it, you can head over to my website. It's morgan.games, and I'll have an area dedicated to it on my portfolio.